Hey guys, thanks for joining us. Hope you're all doing well. We're in Cape Town in South Africa here, and we're currently in Prohibition and in lockdown. So obviously that has a huge impact on the breweries and their livelihoods and their staff's livelihoods and the staff's ability to feed their kids and obviously the guys' abilities to pay all of their bills. So hopefully by the time you're watching this video, Prohibition has been lifted in South Africa. I know they're talking about it this week, and I know the Gauteng Liquor Board have applied to the government to lift Prohibition, at least for off-consumption sales. So truly, hopefully that is going to happen and common sense will prevail, and the content of this video will become irrelevant and just a bit of fun. But yeah, I wanted to make a video earlier on during lockdown of making a beer at home using ingredients that we could buy from stores that are currently open. So I looked around the supermarkets, but I couldn't really find a malt substitute. If anyone knows of one in South Africa, then please do give us a shout. Maybe put a comment down below, and maybe I'll make that video after all. But I did have a look around the supermarket for quite a while and couldn't find a suitable malt substitute. I'd watched a video in the UK where the guys were able to buy like a malt extract syrup, which would have been perfect. So yeah, I had some wheat and some oat options, but no malted grain to convert the starches into sugars. So then I was thinking sugars, and I thought, why don't we just use sugar, plain whole white sugar. So hard seltzers became a really popular thing in the States, and also in parts of Europe, definitely in the UK. When I was over there at Christmas, we saw quite a few of them around. And hard seltzers are essentially like an alcoholic, carbonated, flavoured water. Similar in South Africa to Smirnoff Spins that you would have had growing up, but obviously Smirnoff Spin is made with like vodka or with ethanol, whereas in the States they brew the sugar wash using yeast to make alcohol rather than having a distilled spirit added in there. And I think that's to do with their licensing, or to do with their amount of tax that they pay on the different drinks. So I mean, by all means, if you can buy vodka now, then you can add vodka to carbonated water with a squeeze of lemon juice, and you've pretty much got yourself an equivalent of a hard seltzer. But we're going to make it from scratch using some very simple, easy ingredients to get hold of in the store. So as I said, I've got sugar, I've got lemons, I have yeast, and obviously, you know, you could use brewer's yeast for this, but it's not so easy to get hold of at the minute, whereas this Anchor instant yeast, bread yeast, is or at least in the store I was in, was quite readily available still. And then we're going to use RO water. Now you can buy this still in the shops. You could use tap water. You could use sort of spring water. However, you will end up with a cloudier product, and I'm quite keen to try and get that brightness on the product so that it looks like sparkling water. And then we're going to add a little bit of like minerals back to the water. So we're going to use some Epsom salts, which you can buy easily, bicarbonate of soda, and some sea salt. Don't use iodidated sea salt, iodidated salt. It won't help your yeast. It'll have a negative effect on the yeast. So try and get out of sea salt or some other form of non-iodidated salt. And yeah, that is it. So what I've done already is I've taken a really small jar full of the water, the RO water, and I've boiled it, and then I've put it in this glass jar and covered it with some tin foil to cool down, and that'll become apparent why we need that later on. Another thing that would be really useful if you have some form of thermometer or some way of measuring the temperature, whether it's a temperature probe that you use for cooking, just make sure that it's cleaned. It doesn't need to be sanitary, but it does need to be cleaned. And the biggest pot that you have to hand. So I've got a 5 litre pot here with a lid. That's also important. And obviously these would have been used for cooking applications, so it doesn't need to be sanitary, but it does need to be very clean. We don't want any cooking oils, so we don't want any like flavours from there. So give it a good scrub down, and then and a wash off using like dishwashing liquid. So you're gonna probably use Sunlight, and obviously they do have some flavours and aromas to them as well, so you want to make sure you give it a really good rinse afterwards. Now, sanitization is going to be my challenge here. It's not very easy to get hold of sanitizers right now, but as a home brewer, you know, I do have Acidisan, which is similar to Starsan that the guys use overseas. And I also have this iodophyous sanitizer, so like an iodine-based sanitizer. Now you can buy something similar to this in Discam. I will drop a link in the description below. And you use a really small amount. So for 2.5 litres, which will be plenty to sanitize our equipment, you would use like 1/3 of a teaspoon in 2.5 litres. Of the iodine solution that you would buy in Discam. So that will be useful to sanitize our 5 litre bottle, which we're going to use as a fermentation chamber afterwards, after we've used the water inside there. I'm not gonna use any sanitizer, which scares the shit out of me as a brewer, but I'm gonna assume that this is sanitary because it's got my water stored in it already. If you can get hold of, if you have some kind of sanitizer to hand, then please use that. But let's see how it works out. And then lastly, you're going to need two 2 litre Coke bottles. I've actually got the 2.25 litre Coke bottles, and I'm going to sanitize those with I'm going to use a pasteurization method. So I'm going to fill those with 60-degree water, which is what the PET plastic is tolerable, or it's tolerable up to more than 60, but I mean 60 will be fine for that plastic. And I'm going to leave it in there for an hour and trust that that's going to kill all the bugs that are already in the bottles. So I'm going to use like very newly emptied Coke bottles, but that'll be later on. So now we're going to get to brewing. So what we're going to do is we're going to fill this pot with the RO water, and we're going to fill it, we're going to use about half of the water here. So just going to empty, that's actually enough. So I would go down to about the neck. So we're talking about a third of the bottle of RO water. And we're going to bring that up to the boil, and we'll come back. Okay, so while that is coming up to the boil, we're going to weigh out our sugar, and we want 350 grams of sugar here. Perfect, so we have 350 grams of sugar, and according to my calculator, we're gonna end up with a 5% hard seltzer. The reason I wanted to make this recipe is because sugar is pretty simple and pretty common, so if you repeat these quantities exactly, then you should get a very similar alcohol percentage. Obviously using fruit, it's quite a variable, and obviously the alcohol percentages can be quite a bit different, which then becomes quite dangerous. Whereas if you know you're drinking a 5% solution, then you know like how much you can have to drink of it. I'm gonna actually measure this using my hydrometer along the way. So we'll measure the opening gravity reading and the final gravity. And I always recommend to anybody that's home brewing to use a hydrometer. It's very important to know what your alcohol percentages are. And if the homebrew shops are open at this point, then please go and grab one. Okay, so now that that's come to the boil, we're just going to take it completely off the heat, and we're going to add in the sugar. And we take it off the heat and we're going to give it a good stir in. We take it off the heat just to ensure that it doesn't catch on the bottom. We don't want to caramelize the sugars at all. So we just stir it there until it's all dissolved. Doesn't take very long. And then once it's all dissolved, then you can go ahead and add it back to the heat and bring it up to the boil. And while I'm doing that, I want to weigh out my salts. Now this scale is great for weighing out such tiny ingredients like this. If you don't have this, I'll show you how much salt we actually need. So we need 0.25 grams of table salt, of sea salt, and that is tiny. So that is 0.25 grams. You can see there, tiniest pinch. And we need the same amount of Epsom salts. And the same amount of bicarbonated soda. Okay, perfect. I'm also going to stir those in. And we just want to boil this for 5 minutes, that's all, okay? So once that comes back up to the boil, we will give it 5 minutes. And the one thing we can't buy is yeast nutrient. So we're using this Anchor yeast. We don't need a whole packet, however, to ferment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put half of this packet in now. And it obviously will kill off the yeast, but it'll make it'll better use it as a nutrient. So I'm just going to sprinkle approximately half of the packet in there now, and we'll give that a stir in. Okay, so that is our yeast nutrient, and then the other half we're going to put in our water that we boiled and cooled earlier, and we want to make sure it has definitely cooled to below 30 degrees Celsius. So mine is still a tiny bit warm. It's at 35. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pour out a small amount, and I'm going to pour in some of my RO water. That's perfect. So now we're sitting at exactly 30 degrees. So I'm going to take the rest of the yeast and we're just going to sprinkle this on top of the water. And we're going to mix it. We're just going to pop the lid on, the foil, and then we're going to leave that to one side just to rehydrate. Okay, so now that has been boiling for 5 minutes, I'm going to give it a stir one last time while it's still boiling. to ensure that nothing is sticking to the bottom. We don't want any caramelization here. It looks good. And then I'm going to turn the heat off. I'm going to remove it from the heat as well. And we're going to add the remainder of the water. Now, if your pot is not big enough to add the remainder of the water, then leave the water in the fermenter. This was just to try and cool it down quickly. Pop the lid on, and I'm going to take this over to the sink. Okay, so as you can see in the sink, I've put some freezer blocks just to keep the water really cold, and we put the pan into the ice cold water, and we want to cool this down also to about just below 30 degrees. Also at this point I wanted to add in 15 grams of lemon juice. 15 grams of lemon juice is approximately the juice from one small lemon, and the idea behind that is to just drop the pH in there, and I will take a pH reading now and see what it's at. Temperature wise, we are down to 40 degrees Celsius already, which is great. So one thing I forgot to mention we will also need is a funnel. Now if you've got sanitizer, then obviously a sanitized funnel. If not, I suggest running it through on the hottest setting possible in your dishwasher, and then using it straight out of the dishwasher. And then I've also got a spoon here, which has also just come straight out of my dishwasher. So I'm going to use that to just stir in the yeast after it's been sitting on top. You don't want to overstir it. Just want to get it all wet. Great. So now I'm going to pop that lid, tinfoil lid, back on, and then that's ready for when we come to pitch the yeast into the fermenter shortly. Okay, so now that our sugar water has cooled down to below 30 degrees Celsius, I'm going to pop the funnel on top of our fermenter, and we're very carefully pour into the fermenter through the funnel. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and pitch our yeast into the fermenter. Okay, and then you're going to take your lid and we're going to screw it on just so that's all the way on, and we want to screw it on so that there's a little bit of movement in the lid, so we know that the air can escape. And this is going to act a little bit like our airlock that you would have on a fermenter, where the lid will move up slightly and it will allow the CO2 that's created in here to escape. If you have a small carboy with an airlock on the top, then obviously we're going to use that, but this is making one without using anything that we can't get in the supermarket. So yeah, we'll come back when that starts to ferment, but you want to pop that somewhere in a dark place, for warm dark place. If it can sit around 25 degrees Celsius, then that will be great. Okay, so after a week we put the lid tightly on the 5 litre water bottle, and then we popped it in the fridge, and we let it cold crash in there for a couple of days, and then that's just let all the sediment, all the yeast settle at the bottom of this bottle. And I've got a couple of these 2.25 litre Coke bottles. These are quite nice, the zero, the no sugar ones, because they come in the 2.25 litre size rather than just the 2 litre, so that these should give us a little bit more headspace in the bottles. And then what I've also done is I've taken 40 grams of sugar and I've boiled it in just enough water to dissolve the sugar in, and that 40 grams is going to be split between the two bottles. And then what I've also done in here is I have gone ahead and put some iodine sanitizer in the Coke bottle, and I will pop a link in the description below for where you can get that at, or the type of iodine you can get from Dischem. I'm just going to pour it through the funnel here into the second bottle, so we can sanitize both of them and the funnel at the same time. I did dip the funnel in the iodine beforehand, but it won't hurt to do it again. And then give this a bit of a shake. Put that to one side. See if we can get any more of this out. There we go. Okay. So you're going to want to pop the funnel in the bottle. So you want to put half of your sugar water that's cooled to room temperature into the bottle. And I've weighed it out so I know what half will be. I need to have 968 left. That's the weight including the pan, obviously. You'll be quite precise about this. And also about weighing out the sugar quantities. You'll be precise about that. And at this point it would help if you had somebody to help hold the other bottle for you, just so that when we pour this in, it doesn't fall over. You'll pour this as carefully as possible so as not to disturb any of that sediment on the bottom. Now in an ideal world, if we had a siphon or a racking cane, then obviously we would do that rather than introducing oxygen at this stage. But we are going to get a secondary fermentation in here with the sugar in order to carbonate the hard seltzer, so that should consume some of the oxygen. But yeah, if you have some kind of racking cane, obviously that would be way better than pouring through a funnel. I'm just going to pour up to that level for now. We might top that up once we've done the second bottle, and then going to give the second bottle 5 minutes to sanitize with the iodine solution in, and in the meantime we'll pop the lid back on our fermenter and keep that in the fridge, just to encourage anything that we've disturbed now to settle back down to the bottom. Okay, so after 5 minutes, then I've poured the sanitizer, the iodine, out of the Coke bottle. Pour the remainder of the sugar solution in, and then again, if you get somebody to help you hold the bottle so it doesn't fall over, and then really gently we're going to pour the remainder of our hard seltzer in. And at this point you want to just keep an eye on the sediment in the bottom of your fermenter. You don't want any of that going into the final beer. I'm going to stop there. that's a perfect height. So you want to keep these two at room temperature, and then these will probably stay out for maybe a week. But I'll give you the time on them when we do the tasting. I'll tell you how long it took to carbonate, and then obviously just before we taste it, we need to add the final batch of lemon juice. Hi guys, so we're going to taste the hard seltzer, the lemon flavoured hard seltzer that we made. I have put the juice of one lemon into this bottle, and so yeah, I left it out of the fridge for 4 days at room temperature to carbonate with that extra sugar that we added, and then I put it into the fridge for 2 days to chill and to allow the carbonation to settle into the liquid. And I just added the juice of one lemon now before tasting it. So yeah, we'll see if that was enough lemon. I don't want to add too much, so we can always add some more, and I'll let you know as we get stuck into the taste. Some pieces of lemon in there. Could have filtered that lemon juice through a sieve, I guess, to make it a bit clearer. It's pretty clear, slightly cloudy from the pieces of lemon. It's definitely carbonated. I'd say the smell is predominantly lemon, but a definite kind of yeasty smell there as well. It's not bone dry. I think this one finished at about 4.5% ABV, and it probably could have done with a couple extra days out of the fridge in the bottle just before, just to allow it to fully carbonate. So I would definitely probably give it a week in the bottle at room temperature before you pop it in the fridge, and that should dry it out a little bit more and also get the carbonation up a bit more. But yeah, give it a go. Let me know your thoughts. It's definitely drinkable, and seeing as we can't buy alcohol right now, it's definitely something you can drink on a sunny afternoon like today. Cheers, guys.